The small town of Black Hollow had always been eerily quiet, nestled between dark woods and a vast abandoned lake. People lived there out of necessity rather than choice. It was a place where the past lingered in the air like an unshakable shadow. One such resident was Daniel Crowe, a journalist who had returned to his childhood home after his mother passed away. He never planned to stay, but something about Black Hollow drew him in. It wasn't nostalgia. It was an unsettling feeling that something wasn't right. It started with whispers. Late at night, Daniel would hear them drifting through the walls of his mother's old house's soft, unintelligible murmurs that faded when he tried to focus on them. He chalked it up to exhaustion, but the unease wouldn't leave him. Then, the disappearances began. Sarah Mullins, a local waitress, was the first to vanish. She had finished her shift at Lou's Diner and was seen walking home, but she never made it. Her apartment was untouched. No signs of forced entry. No struggle. Just gone. People whispered about the silent ones. Black Hollow had its fair share of ghost stories, but the silent ones were different. They were the town's oldest legend, spoken of only in hushed tones. They took those who listened too closely. Who heard what wasn't meant to be heard? Daniel, being a journalist, couldn't ignore it. He began digging, talking to old-timers and scanning archives. That's when he found the pattern. Every 25 years, people disappeared in clusters. The last occurrence had been in 1999, before that, 1974. And now, it was happening again. One night, as Daniel pored over his notes, he heard his name. A whisper. Soft. Chilling. He turned sharply, but there was nothing there. Only the shadows stretching across his walls. Then the power went out. Total darkness swallowed the room, and from the silence a new sound emerged: footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway. He wasn't alone. Daniel's breath hitched as the footsteps drew closer. The only light came from the sliver of moonlight filtering through the window. He reached for his phone, but before he could turn on the flashlight, something cold brushed against his arm. He jerked back, heart pounding. The whisper returned, clearer this time, just beside his ear. You shouldn't have listened. He spun around, but there was no one there. Only the creeping darkness pressing against him. The footsteps had stopped, but the air felt heavy, charged with something unseen yet profoundly present. Summoning his courage, Daniel forced himself to move. He grabbed the flashlight from his desk and flicked it on. The beam cut through the blackness, sweeping across the hallway. Nothing. Then the door to his mother's old room creaked open. He hadn't touched that door since returning. The room had always given him an uneasy feeling as a child, and now it seemed to beckon him with an unseen force. Taking cautious steps forward, he reached for the doorknob. His hand trembled. As the door swung wider, the whispers grew louder, surrounding him. The air turned icy, and a foul scent seeped out from the darkness within. He shined the flashlight inside and saw something that made his blood run cold. The walls were covered in names, hundreds of them, scratched into the paint with deep, jagged marks. Some were old and faded, others looked freshly carved. At the very bottom, a new name had been added. Daniel Crowe. The whisper came again, this time right behind him. Now you belong to us. Daniel turned, but the darkness swallowed him whole. The air was thick, suffocating. Daniel's body felt weightless, as though he had been plunged into an abyss without end. A distant rhythmic hum vibrated around him, growing louder, pulsating through his very bones. He wasn't dead. Not yet. A dim, greenish glow flickered ahead, and with it came the whispers, hundreds of them, overlapping, urgent, hungry. Listen. Join. Become. Daniel forced his legs to move, stumbling toward the glow. The corridor he was in seemed endless, the walls lined with more names, thousands this time, each one carved deep with claw-like precision. He reached out, touching one, and a sharp pain seared through his mind. Images flooded his vision, faces distorted in agony, mouths open in silent screams. He gasped, pulling his hand back, but the whispers surged louder. No escape! No escape! No escape! The corridor ended abruptly, opening into a cavernous void. In the center stood a figure, faceless, draped in tattered black, its arms outstretched. The glow emanated from within its hollow chest, pulsating like a dying heartbeat. Daniel wanted to run, but his feet wouldn't obey. You belong to us, the entity spoke. Its voice the sum of all the whispers. You listened, you heard. Now, you join. The shadows surged forward, swallowing Daniel whole. The last thing he heard was his own name, whispered over and over, fading into the silence. Black Hollow would whisper again, and it would wait for the next to listen.